Hello, Garland Nixon here, and I'm not going to say that the U.S. is or isn't going to lose if they go to war with Iran, but I think we should talk about all possibilities. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here, and we're going to talk about a potential conflict that may, or hopefully may not, but may very well be brewing in the Middle East. And I think we should talk about all perspectives of it, right? I think we should talk about, I've discussed it as, the possibilities that could happen, and not in great detail, but one of the things we should talk about is the potential. It's there, right? The potential for a U.S. loss, the potential that the U.S. could lose badly, and I think that needs to be discussed because why is that? I'm not saying it's a 80% possibility. I'm not saying it's an 8% possibility, but I am saying it's a possibility. You may remember. Let me bring this up. I think it's 2002 to start off. 2002. Look at this up. Millennium Challenge. So this was 2002, right? And here's there we go. Rigged war game exposed U.S. vulnerability to low-tech warfare, right? Okay. 2002 after action report from simulated naval defeat finally declassified, right? A recently declassified after action report from a 2002 war game triggered internal warnings that the U.S. military was vulnerable to low-tech warfare. The simulated U.S. naval battle was defeated in 10 minutes by an enemy that launched its attacks from commercial ships using other unconventional means. It was a $250 million Millennium Challenge exercise. It said foreshadowed, quote, the very challenges the United States would face in the 2003 invasion of Iraq and other conflicts since then, right? And let's see, in 2013, a 2002, okay, so there was a lieutenant general named Paul Van Riper who led anti-U.S. forces during the simulation, and the simulation that was supposed to be Iran. Van Riper was highly critical of Millennium Challenge, calling the exercise rigged. After 11 years and review by different agencies, the Pentagon finally responded to the mandatory declassification. Okay, so what happened, right? Operation Millennium Challenge was the U.S. did a exercise in which they would go to war with Iran, and they brought in an old guy named General Von Riper, an old lieutenant general of the Marines. And basically what he did was, he used asymmetric, non-conventional warfare. And because at that time, certainly Iran did not have the conventional technology to go toe-to-toe. So they put him in charge of the forces. They called them like the red versus the blue forces, but really it was supposed to be the U.S. versus Iran. And the bottom line is they got thumped in no time flat. The war started. You know what it reminds me of, if you think about it? It reminds you of I think, was it the movie Billy the Kid? I think that might have been it, where there was a fight and it was like two groups of men, right? And they said, okay, you got to put our best fighter against your best fighter. We're going to fight it out. So the best fighter came, and from one steps out, and it's just like a regular sized guy like me. You know what I mean? Just a regular sized guy. The other guy comes out from the other camp. He's like 6'7", 280 pounds, right? And this guy's looking like, look at the size of this guy, right? And next thing you know, the guy pulls out a knife, and it's like one of those big, long Rambo knives that looks like a sword, right? So you got this huge guy against him with a gigantic knife, and he's supposed to fight this guy, right? And he looks at the guy and he says, okay, firstly, let's establish the rules. And the guy spits, holds up his knife. He says, there ain't no rules. He looks at him, he kicks him right in the nuts. Wham! The guy drops to the ground. He says, "Have it your way," right? Okay, there ain't no rules. Fine, you know what I'm going to do, right? That's the old game. You know, if I can't beat you playing fair, why would I play fair? Of course, which is again, what is that? In traditional fighting, two guys get in a fight, you're not supposed to kick in the groin or poke in the eye. You know, you're fighting out like, what is that? That's like the old Queensberry rules, you know, where the soldiers all march in line and they all drop to their knees and they fire each other. It's pretty much suicide, right? During the uh, Revolutionary War, so they called it. The people that lived in the U.S., the colonists, interesting, the colonists, we'll call the settlers, like they do in Israel. But at any rate, the Americans at that time, like hid in the woods and sniped at them because you know they didn't have the conventional forces to fight them. So they just the whole time the Brits are marching, there's snipers in the woods, in the trees, everywhere, waiting to give them a hard time. So my point is, and they eventually lost. They had sure that they had the overwhelming technological and conventional forces, yes, but eventually they lost to people who said, quote, "There ain't no rules." So let's talk about some reasons and potentials. As I say, as you probably know, you've probably heard this. What's the first rule of conflict? Never underestimate your adversary, right? Or always. Decision-making trees, right? Okay, I'm going to make a decision, put myself in the worst possible position. What's the worst thing that can happen? What's the worst situation that can happen? What's the, multiple enemies against me? I'm cornered. I'm, whatever, and I'm making a decision. Am I ready to deal with the worst case scenario, right? Well, the U.S. isn't clearly. And let's talk about some potential outcomes that could be really, really bad. Again, I'm not predicting that the U.S. is going to get crushed, lose. I'm not predicting, but I'm not predicting that they're not. I'm acknowledging that there's a possibility that the United States could open up a can of ass whooping. I'm just saying you cannot deny that there is that possibility. And now you can deny it. Anybody can deny it. But I'm going to give you some reasons. I wrote them down. 10 reasons the U.S. may lose bigly. Let's start here. And we can see it in Ukraine. The number one I put was bad habits from proxy wars. No respect for the lives of proxy soldiers who get used as cannon fodder. Now, here's what I mean. You may have heard this anybody who played sports like I did, I played several sports. And what is a coach going to say? If you're goofing off in practice, you practice like you play. If you goof off in practice, you'll goof off in a real game, right? I know a guy, I have a friend, I haven't seen him in years, but this guy played in the NBA and he actually played with Michael Jordan on the Bulls. And I said, what do you got to say about Michael Jordan? He said, that guy, he says, every single day in practice, he played every minute of every second in practice, right? Every time they played a game, of course you did the running and things like that and the drills and all that. He said, but when they had practice games, Michael Jordan played every practice game like it was the seventh game of the championship, right? Like it was the last quarter, the last minute. He played every practice game, every pickup game, everything he did. He played it. He went for it 100%. You practice like you play. Of course, then when he went in the game, he didn't have anything but, he only had one speed. I'm going to come at you with everything I got. And of course, you see that. And even people that don't know basketball or have any sports that we like, whether it's UFC or whatever it is, you see people who play with intensity, right? And there's other people that have bad habits, and bad habits leak out on the field. So what do I mean? One of the things the U.S. does in their proxy wars is just use their soldiers as cannon fodder. Look at Ukraine. If you're some brainwashed puppet who like the Russians are losing 1 million soldiers a day and daring Ukrainians are knocking when the Russians have fired 100 missiles and the Ukrainians shot down 103, if you believe that stuff, fine, you probably shouldn't be watching this video anyway. It's not going to do you like good. Well, you should be watching it, but it ain't going to do you much good. But my point is, the U.S. military planners are in the habit of disregarding the lives of their soldiers with no price to pay, right? They had this Kursk invasion and they lost like 70,000 men. And what price is there to pay? None. You know why? because most Americans don't even know that they threw 70,000 men and women, I guess, that they heaved them to their deaths in the Kurth region with nary a result, a positive result. Why? Number one, the U.S. controls the media in Ukraine. Ukraine is nothing but a big prison camp, so the Ukrainians don't have the option. What are they going to do? Protest? What are they going to do? If a man goes out to protest, he'll be grabbed, thrown into a van, and shipped to the front to die. So they can have a callous disregard for the lives of their soldiers with no price to pay. Nobody's even going to know. Who cares? Put them in an anonymous grave, and that's that. Who cares? Guess what? You practice like you play. So the U.S. planners, the habit is to plan as though everything's going to work out fine, to put your soldiers in a very, very dangerous situation. And if they get mowed down like cordwood, who cares? Nobody's going to know. There's no price to pay, which means that is a habit. That is something that they do. And if that is your habit and you got a bad habit like that, and we'll get to later the inability to take casualties, but if you have a bad habit of saying, we'll just throw these soldiers out, and because there's more where they came from, and oh well, hey, let's try this. We'll throw 1,000 soldiers at a little town called Crinky. Well, they all got killed. Or another 1,000. They all got killed. Another 1,000. What the hell? Let's give it a shot. Let's keep throwing them. How many soldiers we got? Oh, we got about 25,000. All right, we'll try this 25 times. And if it doesn't work, we'll go say, darn, that Crinky operation didn't work. Oh, well, let's try another one. Why? Because what do you care about those soldiers? They're proxy soldiers. They're cannon fodder. Their job is to die. And they do it well, unfortunately for them. And the U.S. and NATO planners are in a habit of using cannon fodder. They don't know how to do anything else. And when they plan, they won't be planning for military operations to say, how do we do this where we have the least possible casualties? How do we do this in a way that we say, well, this could possibly go bad on us, so we better be wary. We better, just stick our toes in the water a little bit. No, they're ready to dive in the pool. All right, let's go. We're going to send in this, send in that. We'll attack that. We'll bomb this. And what happens if your enemy has, what happens if those Chinese ships and those Russian satellites and Chinese satellites are picking up some of your communications, and they know what you're going to do, and they know when they're going to do it? Don't you think the Chinese and the Russians, if a U.S. soldier on a carrier group walks over to the side and takes a leak over the side, they're watching them. They know it. They're taking notes. The eyes are on them. Everything that happens, believe me, you're moving ships around. They're like, oh, they're moving people. Oh, they're moving ships around. Oh, they're coming into the wind. They're going to launch. Oh, this is going on. That's going on in these carrier groups. They're preparing. That's happening on this base. They're watching everything you do. And they will probably, I'll put it like this. There's a base where the Oreshniks are often launched from. And what we see oftentimes is some kind of a warning for the Ukrainians when a Oreshnik is about to get launched. I read this. I read a lot of international stuff, and you'll read, according to satellites, this base where some Oreshniks were launched from, there's a lot of movement going on there. They suspect an Oreshnik launch will be soon. And what do you know? When Oreshnik missiles launch, and something gets mushed, turned to dust, right? So don't you think they're doing that? You see, this is not the U.S. versus Iran. It's the U.S. versus, the Brics powers. Brics is powered by Russia and China. And the engines that power Brics are behind Iran. And Iran is a formidable country on its own. But it's also now powered by Brics technology. And so now I suspect that they're watching everything that happens, so they will be able to predict in the same way that you read, hey, there's movement at the so-and-so base. Looks like we're going to have very soon we're going to have an Oreshnik launch. Now, what I have noticed that the Russians do is now they're faking them out, because like every so many days they'll move stuff around at that base and they'll go, oh, looks like an Oreshnik launch. Oh, there's not one. That's what you do. There's a famous case in World War II. When I went to a country called a city in Russia called Rizhev, and it was outside of Moscow, and apparently on the edge of the battle lines, Stalin would come out there to meet with the generals, get a battlefield update, give, instructions, etc. Right. Well, apparently, when he was in Moscow, every day his car and his would leave whatever the Kremlin and go certain places on a certain, right, the cars that he was in, and they knew that German spies were watching that. So what they did was, when he would like go to the battlefront to Rzhev or whatever, they would have like a body double for him, and those cars would drive the same route every single day. So the German spies would see them and say, "We think he's still in Moscow." Right? That's the kind of games you play. And what are the Russians doing? What they're doing, it appears to me, is now those bases, they're like, okay, we're going to pretend like we're launching an Oreshnik every other day, so they won't know which day. We just keep doing it every other day. Hey, let's pretend every 3 days, every 5 days, we pretend like we're going to launch an Oreshnik, and they never know which one's a drill and which one's real. So my point being, in the same way that U.S. And Western technology is watching the movement on Russian bases, and then to determine what the next move is of the Russians, I will guarantee you that everything that the Americans are doing is being watched by Russia and China. And they're saying, okay, will probably, I would likely say, because if you're going to launch an attack, there's certain things you got to do. You got to have the planes on the deck. You got to prep the planes. You got to get planes prepped. You got to get planes ready to take off. There's going to be certain movement. You're going to see fueling of certain things. And I would imagine that the likelihood is that the Russians and the Chinese, with their space-based technology, and of course the Iranians have some, will be watching, and they'll be able to predict within hours. They'll be able to say, okay, look, we see everything happening. Looks like you got 2 hours, 3 hours, 1 hour, right? They'll be prepped. Oh, they're taking off. Oh, we've intercepted maybe comments on the radios and stuff like that. There's a lot of chatter going on. It looks like it's about to happen. And I mean, let's face it, here we watch the old pizza. We watch to see how many pizzas are being purchased around the Pentagon or around the State Department, right? You think China and Russia don't have a lot of ways to find out? So they'll be able to likely say, looks like they're getting ready to do something. Let's prep. And I'm sure they have a plan for when the U.S. launches this attack, some kind of a counterattack. Now, one could argue potentially a preemptive counterattack. And what I mean preemptive counterattack is not necessarily, I don't think Iran wants to shoot first, but let's just say they see everything going. And now they're ready when the U.S. launches, right? So the U.S. launches a bunch of missiles. They launch a bunch of things. They see there are the indicators of this thing are happening, and they see incoming missiles and or incoming planes, incoming whatever, and they say it's happening. That they may be able to launch a counterattack. Let's say the U.S. is firing, what do you call those things? Tomahawks from X amount of miles away, and it's going to take them 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever, right? 20 minutes to get to the target. Iranians may be able to immediately say, okay, they got birds in the air. Yeah, boom, let's do this. So I think that those two things, number one, the U.S. military planning has a habit of attacking inferior opponents and not taking it into account, because they're attacking with proxy wars, or they're attacking inferior opponents, of course, not taking into account the potential for major losses and not really caring because they ain't our troops anyway. That's whether they say it or not, that's going to be a habit, and that's going to happen, and that could be costly. And of course, the technology that we're talking about, space-based technology to be able to see what's happening on the ground, but additionally, and you got to think about this. The traditional way of thinking with the U.S. was we have an advantage because we have ships all around you, and we have bases all around you, right? That's our advantage. We got bases all around you. You're surrounded by bases. Number one, we got people on the ground at those bases. Number two, some of those are air bases, some of those are Navy bases, so we can attack you because we have military bases, which are military assets in your region, and because We're sending expeditionary forces out because because we are projecting our military power out all over the world. We've got to have those bases in order for us to, those nodes of the empire in order for us to project our military power. So usually that is, we got a bunch of bases, boy, you in deep trouble. And we've got ships, boy, you in deep trouble. Now, the problem is this, I think. One of the things we're seeing is a change in warfare that is brought about by technology in the same way. Okay, think about this. What happened in old world? The U.S. the Western powers had guns, and somebody else maybe had bows and arrows. You had cannons and guns; they had bows and arrows. Because of the technological advantage that you had, it was one-sided. You could. What did that mean? Guns versus bow and arrows. It's quite simple. It was a matter of range. A gun can strike their opponent further. I can strike you from a further distance and more accurately, right? It cause greater damage. I'm throwing a steel ball of lead balls at you from a longer distance, and cannonballs which blow up. So you can't do the damage from the distance that I can with the gun. If I've got a gun and you got a bow and arrow, I can pull out, boom, and shoot you. You've got to take the arrow, boom, even if from the same distance, even if we're both within range, the amount of time it takes you to get that arrow out of there and get it going towards me, you don't have enough time. I have an advantage, right? That's what those bases were supposed to be. We got an advantage. We're close to you. We can hit you from the bases. We got ships close to you. We can hit you from the ships. However, technology has changed in two ways. Number one, well, we could talk about drones, but let's talk about the big one, surface-to-surface missiles, right? Surface-to-surface missiles changes everything. If I use an aircraft, an F, whatever the hell, to come attack you, right? I have a trained pilot. I got a lot of time and money in that pilot, and he's irreplaceable. I got to have more pilots in the pipeline, but you can't replace a pilot. You got to have more pilots, right? And there's a finite number of pilots. If I were able to shoot all the pilots, let's say I go in and I poison all your pilots, you can't fly, right? So my point is, every time you lose a plane, use a pilot, that's a very, very expensive asset with years of training behind it on that specific technology, and the plane is gone. It's extremely, and what is that plane? It's a platform. It allows me to deliver ordnance to a particular point, right? Okay, so that's my Air Force. But wait a minute, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to deliver ordnance to a particular location. If I do that with a surface-to-surface missile, right, or air to surface, whatever, if I can deliver ordnance to a particular position, then I have accomplished the same thing. And what missile technology has done, it has allowed people, and at a much cheaper rate. So it has allowed people to do the same thing. And the missiles are disposable. I fire them, they ain't coming back, which means greater range. A plane has to go 1,000 miles. It has to be refueled. It has to come back, all these things. Then I have to protect it while it's there. It's going into a dangerous zone. I want to get the pilot back, and I've got to have assets in the area. What happens if the plane gets shot down? I have to send in rescue crews. They could potentially capture the pilots. They could be, now all these things could happen, right? If I fire a missile, buddy, it's fire and forget. And they're cheaper. So I fire a bunch of missiles. So here's my point. You got bases, right? That ain't an asset anymore. That's a nice, big, ripe target. So now all those bases in the area that used to be assets, because of the surface-to-surface missile technology, they are now, in my opinion, you could make an argument that they're liabilities. As someone else said, they're sitting ducks. Hey, I target them. I don't have to target them. They ain't moving. I don't have to keep targeting them. The only thing I have to do is ensure that I can get the ordnance there. How do I ensure that the ordnance arrives? Number one, I have to have accurate targeting. Number two, I have to defeat your air defenses. How can I do that? Well, there's a number of ways. Number one, I can make sure that the missile is impregnable to electronic warfare. There's a lot of ways to do that. And now the technology is there so they can make missiles mostly impregnable, to some extent, to electronic warfare. Number two, I can fire a salvo of missiles, right? If I fire one missile, that, salvos are based on probabilities, right? If I fire one missile, the probability of hitting that target is 20%. But if I fire two, it goes up to 60. If I fire three, it goes up to 85. If I fire four, it goes up to 99. You see what I'm saying? There is a probability curve where you say, if I fire X amount of missiles, the probability is probably 99.9% that one of them will hit. But every one of those other missiles now enters into that probability curve, which means now a missile that had a probability of 20% hitting may now, that particular missile, the second, third, fourth, fifth missile, all jump up to maybe 60%. So my point being, now I could affect the probability curve with a salvo, but there's something far worse, and that is drones. So now that I'm going to fire missiles, I fire 150 drones. Now, what do the drones do? They overwhelm your air defense system so that it becomes basically useless. And now, once the drones overwhelms your system, I fire the missiles. So the drones, you're trying to fight the drones, and if you don't stop the drones, they're going to do some damage because they have significant explosive or charges or significant ordnance. So I fire the drones. The drones alone are going to give you hell, and they're going to keep your defensive systems busy. Meanwhile, behind that, I fire a salvo of missiles. Now, how are you going to defend the drones and the missiles at the same time? So the bottom line is we've got a combination of technology, which is unmanned aircraft, otherwise known as missiles, which are missiles. Some are reach hypersonic speed. That's a whole different thing to talk about. When you say Russia's hypersonic missiles versus China's versus Iran's, they're totally different. The Russians, many of them are powered the entire way. A lot of missiles are like a bullet. All the power it's fired out, but now some of these will, like for maybe the first 20% of their flight, they're powered, and it gives them an incredible amount of speed. And then, of course, boom, the power goes, and they just flying unbelievably fast the whole way. Whereas a lot of the Russian hypersonic missiles are powered the whole way, and these missiles can move and take evasive maneuvers at unthinkable speeds. The Russian hypersonic missiles are in a class by themselves in international warfare. But hypersonic missiles nonetheless go so fast that they're hard to hit. Imagine if a bullet's going through the air and you got to shoot another bullet with another bullet. And as soon as that bullet starts moving, you ain't hitting it. And even if it ain't, hitting a bullet with another bullet, and to add this, you've got to hit the bullet in a way that destroys it. Right. So bottom line is Iran has hypersonics, and we don't know what else they might have been given. They have targeting, which allows them to hit the accurately approach the target. Many of them have evasive maneuvers that allow them to move. They have multi-warhead missiles, which is similar to the Oreshnik, not necessarily the same power as the Oreshnik by any stretch of the imagination, but a warhead that comes in and splits into 4, 5, or 6 warheads, into multiple warheads, and they all come in at the same time. Trouble. You guys have been facing that kind of stuff. And what are they firing them at? Bases that are sitting still, sitting ducks. U.S. is not accustomed to that. Now, next, you've got your ships, and man, there's some nasty anti-shipping missiles, and you don't know. That's the problem. You don't know what they have. How do you prepare to defend? Do they just have their own? Do they have some of their own? Do the Iranians have some of their own where nobody really knows, and they just said, okay, people do that. They're like, I don't want you to know I've got, in case you really, I've been saving this special weapon for you. I got a special weapon that I don't want you to know about, and I'm saving it. If you ever attack me, if I ever get in the corner, I'll pull that weapon out. And it's a nasty one. Do you know that the Iranians have some subs? Could they possibly be able to use those to attack? They have underwater drones that can attack. They got so many options. You don't know what they are. So the potential is there for you to get some surprises that you were not prepared for that can have devastating results. My point being, I'm not saying that it's going to happen or it ain't going to happen. I'm saying if you, in this day and age, are going to attack a country with the military power of Iran, with the support of Russia and China, man, you get your nose bloodied. You could get knocked out. All right. Let's go. Let's add this. The U.S. uses satellite power. Now, what do we know? We know that the U.S. satellites are in low orbit. We know that Russian satellites they put their satellites in higher orbit, which makes them more difficult to attack. But the U.S. satellites, have our satellites, and it's effective. An incredible array of satellites, which gives us incredible technology and ability to see things on the ground and to monitor things on the ground. Absolutely, that's a fact. Okay. However, one of the things that we also know is that the Russians and the Chinese, and we probably have the same thing, the Russians and the Chinese have the capacity to attack satellites. We know that the Russian S-550, you probably heard the S-400, the S-500, the S-500, the S-400, the S-500 had the capacity, according to the Russians, to attack satellites, to attack incoming ballistic missiles, to do some things that even the S-400, doesn't have the capacity to do. It's a more robust system when it comes to ballistic missiles, satellites, things like that. Okay, we know that we've been told that maybe the Russians or the Chinese have what would be called the killer satellites, which is a satellite that floats around out there, and it's got a bunch of missiles on it. And if you go to war, that's going to fire missiles at your satellites and shoot your satellites down. So there could be a satellite war. Now, here's my question: what happens if if Iran had some killer satellites or anti-satellite technology, or if Russia or China share said satellite technology with the US and we get blinded? EMPs, things like that. What happens if we get blinded? If the US gets blinded, it's like you get in a fight and somebody throws sand or salt in your eyes. You're like, oh my God, I can't see. You pick a fight with somebody that knows how to fight and you get blinded for a second or two, that fight is over and you are going to be hurt really bad. You'll be lucky if you live. If they choose to kill you, they can. A person who knows, even a person who don't know how to fight, but a person that knows how to fight, and you get temporary blind and you got to grab your eyes, it's over. So here's my point. If they're able technologically to temporarily blind the US, or if they're able technologically to find ways with their missiles and or planes that make them stealthy, that make them unable for the US, be it through jamming or whatever, to stop them, bad news. That's technological advances that are out there that are equal and in some instances superior to US military technology. And you're really going to go attack somebody in their home and go up against that. Again, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm giving reasons and possibilities where things could go really, really bad. And I guess back to the other one, in a way, I've got no experience in facing peer or near peer competitors. And that also goes back to the proxy wars. The US is usually facing, usually picking on, Venezuela, or they're picking on Libya, or they're picking on someone who does not have the kinetic ability to defend themselves, who does not have the technological ability to defend themselves, who does not have the support system from other countries to defend themselves. So we don't have a lot of experience going against peer or near peer competitors, and we don't even know how to define peer or near peer competitors because we haven't been fighting anybody. Unless I fight somebody, I don't know. Unless I spar against people, I don't know if the things that I practice will work. I can practice all kinds of moves and wrist grabs and kicks and punches and bites and whatever the hell. But unless you spar against somebody, you don't know how human beings are reacting. You go to throw a punch and you've practiced this punch a bunch of times in the world. Why? It's your hammer punch. It's your whatever, right? You practice that, a guy blocks it and slams you on the ground. You're like, oh, crap. So that's what's going to happen. But you learn people's reaction and what the potentials are, right? And guess what? You learn how to overcome them. And you learn that when somebody else blocks a punch or somebody else throws a punch, you have to react. If that doesn't work, you react. Okay, right? All that being said, U.S. has done no real sparring. The only thing we do is either we go against somebody that we can easily defeat, or we throw some poor Ukraine or somebody up against Taiwan, whatever the hell, up against a real fair competitor and let them get smashed to pieces. Who cares? So we don't have experience facing peer or near peer competitors. We haven't done any sparring. We're going into a fight blind. That's another reason that the U.S. could get the crap smacked out of them. Let's go another one, which I think is important. Glass jaw. I have this. No political support, which means inability to take casualties. Okay, we've got 21%. Actually, I better go back and change my Substack. I wrote an article and I said, yes, 21%. And the other 89 something like the other 89%. I mean, 70%. It was the other 89% aren't for it, right? So I better go change my Substack. But I meant 79. After somebody pointed it out to me, I looked. I'm like, oh crap, typo. But at any rate, so we got 79% of Americans that are like, I don't know about that, and not sure whether we should, whether we shouldn't, or I don't think we should. So 79% of Americans ain't down with it. 21% of it are, right? That ain't no way to go into a war with 21% of support. And let me tell you something, because when you go into a war, that as things go bad, and in this one they can go real bad. You go into a war with 21%, and the first day, what happened? We got 500 casualties. You know what that 21% is going to turn into? One. That's going to turn into 1%. And but all jokes aside, you're going to turn into 10%, 12%, 15%, and dropping fast, right? So you have no political support for this war, which means if you start taking casualties, people are going to scream, get out now, and you've lost. You go in, we're going to take this guy, and you grab him, bam, and he punches you right in the nose, and everybody around you goes, tap out, let's go. I don't want to fight no more. What are you going to do? You've got no support. You're looking at political instability at home as a result of you're now fighting a war one day in, or days in, or a week in, or 2 weeks in. Let's say you attack and you get punched in the hell like in the face. You're just started the war, and it is a war. It ain't a strike, it's a war, and you are in a war. And Iran's ready to fight for a long time. And in the region, your bases are getting attacked in Africa. Your bases are getting attacked here. Soldiers are going down. What do you call it? Mortars are coming in. Small rockets and charges are coming into your bases all over the place. You are in a major, major, major war everywhere. And your soldiers are catching hell. And the people in America are going, oh, crap. Get out of this thing. Come home. Right? The American people, you got a glass jaw. You don't have political support. And one of the reasons that, because everybody talks about this, the United States can't take casualties. Trump can't take casualties. Why? Why is it that you can't, that a country will or will not take casualties? A country will take, Russia took 27 million. China took 20 to 30 million themselves in World War II and kept fighting. Why is that? Because they didn't have a choice. Because they were being attacked, because it was about, we got to fight to the last man, because this is all about us getting totally and completely destroyed and wiped off the map. So we're going to keep fighting until there's nobody left. We have no choice. But if you launch a war of aggression that the American people mostly don't know about, or are not in favor of, or ambivalent about, as soon as you start taking casualties, American people are going to say, we didn't sign up for this, because they didn't sign up for it. So the reason that the U.S. can't take casualties, has a political glass jaw there, is because they're always lying their people into some cockamamie war that the American people don't want. People are willing to take casualties if they believe that they're fighting for a just cause, that they're fighting for a defensive cause. But we ain't, and we never are. We're fighting to make the world safe for thieves and pedophiles to go around the world and steal everything. I don't think the American people or any other country are going to support that. So you start taking a hit, American people will go bananas, and they're going to pull the rug out from under you at home, and they're going to be in the streets by the million screaming, what the hell is my son coming home dead and daughter coming home dead for? Israel, and at a time when everybody knows it's for Israel, and Israel is not well liked in this country. So the political glass jaw means casualties. It's going to cause you great problems. Next, we'll go here. An inability to support long-term combat activities. Well, let's face it, that is a result of voluntary deindustrialization, right? That is the United States, the people who own the titans of industry, saying, you know what? We could make a lot of money if we were to build this stuff in China, in Bangladesh, in wherever the hell, Haiti, and wherever we can find places to have sweatshops. I mean, if we do it here, for God's sake, we got to pay the people a decent wage. We got to give them retirements. We got to look out for them. Then we got to worry about laws. We can't just dump everything we want into the rivers. And we got all kind of problems if we do that here. We have to adhere to laws. But if we do it in another country, we don't have to do that. And the labor's cheaper. Let's move everything. Okay, they did it and it was successful. They made lots of money. Now they financialized our economy, and certainly they, greatly weakened our economy. But my point being, they moved forward. They got what they wanted with the deindustrialized economy, where money is made by financialized tools and derivatives and asset-backed securities and things like that. But we now have no real backbone for our economy, not an industrial backbone, which means if we get in a war, we can't sustain the war. We can't build the things that you need to have have a war, because it's never really a war. We don't consider it a war. We can't say it's a war. Why? Because if Trump were to say we're going to war, then it would be obvious. The reality would be obvious. And what would the reality be? The reality would be you got to go to Congress and they have to declare war. But they can't go to Congress and have Congress declare war because the American people won't have it. So instead they say we're going to strike country so-and-so. They use the language that implies it's not a war. But the other side, though, it's a war to them. What did Iran say? You attack us, this means a war. This means an all-out war. So you are starting a war. If the other side says, now Trump's like, we'll strike them. Well, wait a minute. If the people that you were talking about striking say, if you attack me, I'm going into all out war, then you are in fact starting a war. Unconstitutionally, I might add, right? So now you've started a war, but you're not on a war footing. So what happens 2 weeks from now? You saw what happened 12 days from the beginning of the conflict against Iran, where the U.S. said, where the U.S. and Israel, and again, Israel was the proxy, and Israel was treated like a proxy. A lot of people don't want to believe that. They were treated like a proxy. They were a proxy, and they were treated like a proxy. They got the hell pounded out of them for 12 days. And if you remember, some Israelis were like, I'm getting the hell out of here. And the Israeli government said, nobody can leave. Does that sound like a country that you want to be in? Hey, we got a war. I'm out of here. Sorry, you're not allowed to leave. You got to stick around. We need more casualties. They got their asses ground in the dust in 12 days. That ain't a war. That's a butt kicking, and a quick one. And see, here's my point. Think about what I'm saying. The possibility is there for a butt kicking. Well, do we have a point of reference? Let's see what happened last June, the first couple of weeks of June. Israel, we are the fourth most powerful army in the world. We got it, man. We got F-35s. We got Tomahawks, David Sling, Ring, Bing. We got all kind of stuff. We're going to come in there and we're going to put it on these old Iranians. Why Iranians? They're, lesser beings, cattle, dare I say, right? We're attacking the Iranians. Ha ha. And you know what else? We got Mossad. We got all kinds of stuff, CIA in there, booby traps, MEK, spies. We got spies, lies, French fries. I don't know. We got every damn thing. We're coming to get you. That was their plan, except the enemy gets a vote. So they attacked, and they were able to knock Iran back off their feet a little bit. Iran knocked back off their feet, and they got themselves together, and they got stood up, and they said, oh, it's a fight you want, huh? Okay, we thought we were talking. We thought we were working on a deal, but you want to fight. Got just the thing for you. And they knocked the hell out of them. They backslapped these guys. They knocked, and here's the deal. If you think about it, what Iran did was say, basically, well, Israel's our light work. We ain't worried about that, right? We'll just pound them into submission with our old missiles and drones. Who cares? They're come on, Israel. We're worried about this little pipsqueak, these Chihuahuas, right? So they just flattened them. And they said to the U.S., we're holding out our good stuff because we suspect the United States is coming in, right? We're going to hold out the good stuff because we think the U.S. is coming in. So we'll just slap these boys around. We ain't worried about the monkey. We're worried about the organ grinder. So we're going to beat the hell out of the monkey. Just punch it with ease because the organ grinder's coming. And that's the one we know we got to be prepared for, right? So after about 12 days, Israel went to the U.S., get the hell out of here. And the U.S. went and talked to Iran, and boom, that was it. So we do have a point of reference. It's not like I'm talking out of turn, like I'm just making things up. What happened? The U.S. sent their proxy, who they thought was so powerful to take out Iran. And the proxy even got like a 12-hour jump where Iran's defenses were down. But when Iran got their defenses, they shook it off. and they started throwing punches, there was nothing Israel could do. Nothing but scream and cry, please, God knows, get these bastards off of me because they're about to kill me. Somebody, please get these. Somebody has thrown me into the cage with a madman and I got to get out of here, right? That's what they did. We have a point of reference. Who saw that coming? The Israelis were a long ways from reality, if you think about it, because they thought we can hit them with these terrorist acts and drones and stuff, and then we'll come in with our real army, and then they'll be really in trouble. So they did that, and they got everything they wanted. And then they came in with their real Air Force. Oh, we're going to get them now. We got David Sling, and we got all kind of defensive. And so they kind of, if you think about it, Israel planned an operation, and the operation worked to a T, right? We're going to get their air defenses down. They got them down. We're going to do decapitation strikes and kill some of their leaders. They were able to do decapitation strikes and kill some of their leaders, right? Then we're going to send in all kinds of terrorists, and we're going to fire a lot of missiles and stuff at them. Everything they did worked, and they got their ass kicked anyway. Imagine if some of it didn't work. Everything they did, their entire plan worked perfectly. Imagine that. You plan for this guy. I'm going to sneak up on this guy and I'm going to steal him, as they say, sucker punch, steal. I'm going to do that. Everything works right. You set the guy up. You walk up behind him. You say, tap on the shoulder. And when he turns around, you steal him with a big punch. Bam, right in the snoot. Whap. And you're like, ha ha, everything works. And you set the guy up and you punched him. Bam, right in the snoot. That's the knockout punch. And the guy falls back a little bit and stumbles around a little bit. Shakes a little bit, looks at you, says, now you really pissed me off. You're in deep and serious trouble. You had a plan. It's not like your plan didn't work. Your plan did work exactly like you wanted. But he took the punch and shook it off. And now he's mad. And now you're going to see what he's got. Now it's his turn, right? Here's the thing about it. That's what the Iranians did. Once they shook it off, they said, okay, now perhaps you need a demonstration of what we have. Perhaps you don't quite understand the gravity of this situation here. How about you want us to get rid of these ballistic missiles? We'd be happy to get rid of them. We've had enough of all these missiles we got. We'll send them to Tel Aviv, one salvo at a time. Here they come. We get rid of the missiles? Certainly. I mean, what are we going to do with all these missiles laying around? They're getting in the way. People are tripping over them. They can blow up. Tell you what, we'll send them to you, airmail. Whew. And they delivered exactly what Israel asked for. They delivered their long-range missiles to Israel. We'll send them to you, and you can dispose of them when they get there. That's what Iran did. Israel did everything they wanted, everything right, and they still got their butts stomped into the ground in 12 days. They say it's a 12 days war. 12 days ain't a war. It's a butt whipping. In history, a 12-day war, the 12-day war. What happened? Oh, at the end of the 12-day war, what happened again? Oh, they called and begged for mercy and cried uncle. That ain't a war. For 12 days, Israel got punished. Israel got brutalized. Israel got absolutely pulverized for 12 days. And then they tapped out. They called Uncle Sam, please, God knows, get me out of here. That ain't a war. They got pulverized. So you've already had an instance where you plan to take them out and you send in your proxy and they pulverize your proxy so fast you didn't even know they were there. And now you're going to go back in yourself and just try them yourself. And I'm just saying, what happens if this lasts for weeks, 2 weeks? Now, the other thing is this. 2 weeks, the inability to maintain a long-term fight. Look, they already know that you have an issue with air defense missiles. Don't you think they're going to take advantage of that? If I were Iran, I'd have 1,000 missiles that just old wooden crates or something, made of old milk crates. You know what I mean? Slow moving missiles. I'm saying that to be facetious, but if I were Iran, put Garland in charge of it. What are you going to do? I'm going to be building missiles, cheap missiles that don't even have a warhead on them, by the tens of thousands. And you know what I'm going to do? very, very early in the game, I'm going to open the first day and I'm going to fire 900 missiles that don't even have a warhead. But mixed in with that are going to be 100 that do. And every day, I'm going to fire hundreds and hundreds of dummy missiles, old missiles, don't have a warhead, along with a couple hundred drones. Why is that? Because you ran out in 12 days last time. You were in deep trouble in 12 days and you had to tap out, but not because you were out of missiles. You had to tap out because you knew you would soon run out of missiles. You see, I don't have to make you run out of missiles. If I can fire so many missiles, you can count. You got guys there with calculators somewhere. You got software that can look and say, hey, guess what? We fired 60% of our missiles in the first 2 days. That means we got a day and a half left, right? So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to say, this time, I'm firing so many missiles, including all my old missiles, my dummy missiles, my smarty missiles, whatever you want to call them. I'm firing so much of that stuff at you on day one that I am going to, where it took me 12 days to deplete it, I'm going to try to deplete you quickly. I'm going to fire so much stuff at you, drones, missiles, everything's coming 24 hours a day. I'm going to exhaust your air defense system. I'm going to exhaust the people that are running your air defense system. I'm going to exhaust you as quickly as I can, because at that point, it's open season. And much earlier than that, at the point where your people start calculating and they call the boss, we got a problem. What? We've been fighting Iran for 2 days. Yeah. We've used 60% of our missiles. Okay. We got a day and a half and we're completely naked. We're out of missiles. What do? We got a problem. We lose the war. That's what we do. So anyway, that's my point. We don't have the capacity, the industrial capacity to support a long-term war. We don't have the industrial capacity to support a short-term war, much less a long-term war. Let's get rid of the terms. We do not have the industrial capacity to support a war, period. We don't have it. And these brainwashed Americans out here who know nothing about military arms, nothing about understanding about a war. So we're going to start a war, not a strike, start a war when you have no political support. Perhaps they should read that book behind me, von Clausewitz, on war. You got to have some political support. You got no political support. You have to lie the people into this strike against Iran that's really a war. You got no political support. You do not have the industrial capacity or the political capacity, might I add, to drag this thing out for weeks and weeks, for months and months, let alone weeks. And you're going to start this? You can't win if you do that. And again, the potential is there for you to get punched in the nose. Let me add this. We don't have a ground war capacity, right? The IRGC has ground soldiers. They're ready to fight on the ground. We're going to fly over Iran. We're going to hope that it's a technology war. What are you going to do? Well, we're going to throw some missiles at long-term ordnance at them. Missiles. We're going to throw, hopefully fly some planes in and drop bombs. Well, what happens if the air defense is so thick? We have not operated in a modern air defense environment now. And you're going to send planes in there. You got S-400s in there. They're shot down. You got electronic jamming and warfare thick as pea soup, and you're going to send American planes into that? Brother, they ain't coming back. So my point is, you got to have some ground forces. And you can't go into Iran. Iran is the size of Western Europe. Iran is a major, major, major military power. Iran has ground forces that are dedicated and ready to fight. What happens? Let me ask you this. What happens if you got American bases and they're attacked by ground forces? What happens if you got an American base and this American base is like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to have air defense and we're prepared. We might take some mortars and 1,000 soldiers attack. And some missiles come in, boom, 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 and hit your ground base, hit your American base and wherever, right? And then The Iranians do some kind of a landing, something, they bring in choppers, whatever the case, right? And your base now, this is a real war where it's not just missiles flying in, you are attacked by ground forces on an American base. What do? You can't bomb the enemy because he's on your base. You're bombing your own base. Could be really bad. Really, really bad. You don't have ground forces. You're going into a war. That ain't a war. A war means air, sea, and ground forces. What war? Look at historical wars and tell me one that didn't involve any ground. Hey, we're going to war. Remember the War of 1812? Yeah. Was anybody on the ground? Nah, they just flew over in air balloons. That's not a war. You're looking at a war. A war will mean ground forces. And might I add, if I'm Iran, I got ground forces in Africa. I'm gonna hit some of your bases. And what are they going to do? What is the ground force going to do if it attacks a base and it overruns the base? It's going to kill every soldier in there. I mean, that's what they're going to do. That's what your soldiers are going to do defensively. If they're attacked by the enemy, they're going to machine gun them and they're going to kill every soldier there. Well, what are they going to do? They're going to take the base and kill everybody in that base. They're going to take all of the computers. They're going to take everything. Everything. You imagine Americans losing bases anywhere in Africa, in the Middle East, and every soldier in there is dead and the base is gone? And you know what they're going to do? They're going to put they're going to take the computers. They're going to get into the computer system. They're going to put charges all over the bases, blow the hell out of it, and leave. That is the potential that can happen in a war when you don't have ground forces, and we don't have ground forces. All right. Here's one that can't be overlooked, and that is the Iranians and the Brics people have the capacity to use economic means. Okay. And the Iranians have made it clear, we will do this from the very beginning. What does that mean? That means Americans, 21% of whom support this, Americans wake up and they're like, yeah, man, wow, war, that's something. Another one. I wonder how things are going. Because normally that's what Americans do. Hey, guess what? We've attacked country X. And Americans are like, wow, that's interesting. Hey, you watching the game tonight? Americans totally disconnected. Why? Because we ain't feeling the pain. The way I always put it is like this. Look, if your diet is crap, if you're eating cheeseburgers and fries and Cokes every day, you're not like me. You're not trying to eat a healthy. I try to because I want to be, a healthy person. What's the old saying? If you eat healthy food, there's a reason they call it unhealthy food versus healthy food, the outcomes. So if you're eating that crap every day, but if you eat a cheeseburger and fries and a Coke, if you ate that and you gained 5 pounds and you got diabetes and high blood pressure instantly, nobody would do it. But why did they do it? Because over the course of the long term, it happens and they don't notice. And then they're like, my blood pressure's up and I don't feel good. And I've got things breaking out on my skin, and their health starts to go to crap. And they don't stop to think, what are you going to do? Well, I got a doctor's appointment, but first I'm going to go to lunch. What are you going to get? Fries and a Coke and a cheeseburger. It never dawns on them. Most people cannot put together in their minds. They're not like, let's see. I eat like crap. I drink too much liquor and alcohol. I smoke a pack a day. I don't get any rest. I don't take care of my body. Gee, I wonder why I'm sick. Gee, I wonder why I feel like crap. I wonder why I'm depressed. I just can't figure it out. It must be genetics. Most people cannot put together the lifestyle, a healthy versus an unhealthy lifestyle. Most people don't put that together with the outcomes, which is how you feel mentally, physically, how you look, all of those things. That most people don't put that together. It's like, I wonder why I feel like this. Look at your diet. Look at your rest. Look at everything you do. And then at some point, you might just figure it out. Okay. Well, most Americans don't put together, hey, our foreign policy. They say, hey, why is our economy crap? Why is our schools bad? Our roads, all these things. There's nothing, Social Security and all these things that Americans get. It's not enough and blah, blah, blah. They don't put together that our foreign policy is the reason that we spend all of our money, that it's all robbed and stolen by the Epstein class, and it's all shoved into boondoggles in the military. They don't put that together. Gas is too high. I wonder why. They don't put it together that it's the foreign policy. However, they will put it together if the foreign policy happens. We're attacking Iran, and Iranians say, okay, we're closing the Straits of Hormuz. Okay, the Straits of Hormuz are closed. So now what? Within a 24-hour period, we've attacked Iran. They got that in their brain. They saw it on TV. They're closing the Straits of Hormuz. Okay, that's within a 24-hour period. I can see that. Let me go get some gas. Holy sweet mother Jesus, did you see the prices of gas? I can't pay that. Oh, my God. $10 a gallon. They're nuts. All right, I'm going to go to the grocery store. Let's see. How about a tomato? $5 for a tomato. Yeah, well, they bring it here by truck with diesel fuel. Guess what? They now can put it together. Wait a minute. Hold on here. I think I have a theory. They attacked Iran yesterday. Iran closed the Straits of Hormuz yesterday. And today, I can't afford to buy anything, and my economy is collapsing around me. I think we have a connection. Finally, Americans will have the equivalent of biting into that cheeseburger and fries and drinking that Coke and getting sick immediately so that you can put the two together. Sadly, that's what Americans need, and that's what they will get if these idiots attack Iran. They will get the instant knowledge that foreign policy, your stinking life is a living hell. Now I know why. So economics will be a massive weapon. And again, that's what makes Iran a world power. Iran is a world power. Why? It is a local power. It is a regional power militarily, but because of its geographical location and its ability to shut down the Straits of Hormuz and the Bab el-Mandab Strait, which is the entrance to the Red Sea, which is the entrance to the Suez Canal, because they can shut these things down, they can affect the world economy. So they're actually world powers economically and militarily. So those are that's another thing in sphere in the full spectrum dominance area that the U.S. can lose bigly and quickly. That's what I'm saying. We could lose not just bigly, as Trump would say, but quickly. A couple more things. The threat of a civilizational jihad war. Now, one of the things Trump has said is that, and they're talking about, we may kill Ayatollah Khomeini. Oh, you may be able to, you may not be. I don't know. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, you do. Bomb hits him. Ayatollah Sistani, who's one of the highest and most respected Shia clerics and Shia religious leaders, and other Shia clerics have said, if you kill him, we will issue a fatwa, which is like a religious document, a religious edict that says that Muslims, all, which would apply to your Shia Muslims, are now required to do jihad, which is a holy war, which is a religious war against the U.S. and Israel. Well, that's not a good thing. In the United States, you will have people who are gentle people, who don't want any trouble, who would never harm a flea, but who are very, very religiously inclined and say, you know what? I'm not a nonviolent person, but now I have a religious edict and I have a religious duty to God, and that is to fight the United States and Israel. So there could be very, very bad things going on here in the United States and Europe and elsewhere, where against you now have, millions and millions of people who now say, okay, we're at war. That's the ultimate asymmetric war. Does that mean that some guy's driving down the road in friggin' Schenectady and he says, okay, well, I got to do something. I got a car. Well, there's a bus stop full of people. I don't know. I don't know what it really means, but I just simply know that it means that you biting off more you can chew. That's the ultimate asymmetric warfare. And if you do that, I don't know how you get out of that. I don't know how you get out of that one. Again, another reason you could lose bigly very quickly. We got a couple more. The threat of political instability and political rejection in the region. What does that mean? That means that you could get ejected from the region. That means that now you've got countries like Bahrain that are 80% Shia and 20% Sunni, and the 20% Sunni, the minority rules. Well, guess what happens? That might not work anymore for them. You've got countries like Saudi Arabia, 20% Shia, but they mostly live and work in the oil fields. What happens if they say we ain't going to run these oil fields? What happens if they say we're going to blow them? What happens if they say we're going to revolt against the government? things could get nasty. Now, let's think of this. If there's a jihad declared, then they may say, well, it is our job to attack the Saudi government, to blow up the oil fields, to do anything we can to hurt you, right? All across the region. You could lose countries. Lebanon, some of these other countries, you could lose where, in fact, the Shia, there's a huge Shia population in Nigeria, in Pakistan. I mean, now what happens? Your bases now there could be attacked. You could be run out of the region. You could create political instability. You could now also have governments that are minority Shia, Sunni governments that say, I have to react to the Shia people or I'll get my head cut off. That there's so many Shia in a particular country that a country that is not run by Shia says, I got two options. Either I can go along with what my Shia people want, or my country's going to fall into instability and I'll likely be killed, the royal family, whoever. Is that something that's a good option? So the U.S. could create such political and instability and political rejection in the region that politically they get ejected from the region. In fact, I would suspect that's even a good likelihood. And last but not least, Africa and other regions may consider attacks in the U.S. moment of weakness. You got other places in the world where the U.S. has bases. You have the Chinese looking at Taiwan saying, this is part of China and we don't like what you're doing. And the Chinese may just say, we've had about enough of this. We're not waiting around for you idiots to act up. We're taking Taiwan now. And again, on the economic sphere, what happens if China says, that's it, United States, we will never sell ever, as long as you live, we will never sell you another gram of the rare earth minerals that you need. What happens if China says, we're not doing business with you anymore? Because people are like, well, the American will use nukes, but that's the end of it. Because I would suspect the Chinese will say, well, that's it. We ain't doing business with you. And a lot of other people say we ain't doing business with the America anyway. That's it for America. That's it. We would face all kinds of economic breakdown and starvation and things of that nature. That's it. But you have areas of the world such as Africa and South America and some other places where people are not happy with the Americans. And look, if they see the bullies looking weak, right? If they see the bully getting punched, they may say, now's my chance. He's down and I don't like him. And some of the regions in Africa may say, you know what, the United States has all its resources over there and its bases are naked. Time to hit them. Some of your bases could be hit, could be attacked, could be obliterated. Now what? You're getting hit everywhere. You're in the Middle East and you're trying to defend your people there and they're getting hit now all over Africa, maybe in South America, maybe other places. And now China's moving on Taiwan. And now Russia says, we've had bad enough of these goose-stepping sons of bitches in Ukraine. I think we're going to put an end to this. And a bunch of Areshniks come whistling into Kiev. And they say the whole area where the government buildings are, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's not going to exist anymore. We've decided to end that. Your bridges, your everything. We've decided to end this thing. And Russia sends in a missile barrage like Noah, and they use Areshniks, and it's over. And they turn Ukraine into a fiery living hell. And they got the ability to do it. Now what? They see their opportunity. They say, okay, yeah, you're getting your ass kicked over there. China is moving on Taiwan, Russia. Let's finish up Ukraine. The Africans who may or may not be owned by the Russians and Chinese. Man, you are asking for that. That's why, in a way, what I've said, I'll end up by saying this. In a way, I've said, I doubt if this happens. From a rational perspective, I say that because the possibility, or I might even say likelihood, of unbelievable repercussions are so great that I wouldn't want to be the one in the middle of this crap. But who knows? I don't know. It could. It may be likely. But that's it for Trump if it happens, because the repercussions are going to be bad. And as I said, could it be a standoff? Yes. Could the United States have some success in hitting Iran? They certainly could. Could Iran have some success in hitting them back? It certainly could. But there is a possibility that we cannot discount. And that possibility is that the United States starts this war, that the United States attacks Iran, and they get their asses handed to them within the first few hours. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I was just making the argument and giving some potential reasons of why we have to consider it as a possibility. That's all I'm doing. We must consider it as a possibility. So that's that. Let us now look and see, do we have any? We got some super chats. Great. We're going to answer the super chats. We always have good questions and things like that in comments. So we're going to go through the super chats. Flying Bar says, get rid of Iranian President Pezeshkian. Let me comment on that. And I think that's one of the great weaknesses of U.S. foreign policy. And the great weakness is the bad guy is the problem, right? We don't take into account Iran's been around for like 3,000 years. We don't take into account that China's been around for 5,000 years. No, there's just one guy. It's one guy. We get rid of what's that going to do for a society, for a civilization that's been around 3,000 years? So what? He's gone. He's not gone. It is what it is. So I'm not one who says, oh, if this guy goes or that guy. What happens is if somebody goes, somebody else comes in, that's usually more aggressive and assertive. So if they get rid of Pezeshkian or don't get rid of Pezeshkian, I don't think that changes the dynamics of what's happening. I think the Iranians are playing just like the Russians. They're playing this diplomatic game, and they're at the end of their rope, and they're like, okay, we've done this as long as what we can. So no, the answer is no to all this bull crap you're throwing. Whatever you're going to do it now or don't. It's up to you. So I don't think getting rid of one person or bringing in one person is going to make a difference in a country that's been around for thousands of years. Thank you very much for the comment. Gives me an opportunity to comment on that. How about we go to Moises Rodriguez. Thank you very much. We got any more? Okay. All right. Here's one. I think if the U.S. attacks Iran, its military power reduced by a third or perhaps even more if it sends more troops. Well, I don't think it's going to send a lot more ground troops, but I think, yeah. I've said this. If I were the Chinese and I saw all them ships there and I said, you got a third of 20%, whatever, of your ships in one place, and I got a chance to shoot at them and make sure that they don't return to the South China Sea. If I were the Iranians and the Russians, I'd say, man, you bunched all of this naval power and all of this military power up in one place, and I can flatten it all. If I were the Russians and the Chinese, I would say to myself, this is the opportunity that I've been waiting for. I was only hoping and praying that you would be stupid enough to bunch all of your equipment together in one region. That's bad enough. But then you gave me a proxy to use so I can destroy that stuff and I can claim that it wasn't me. You got to be kidding me. Oh, heavens has rained down its mighty joy on me today. If I were the Russians and the Chinese, I'd be like, okay, Iranians, here's the plan. We're going to target them. We'll provide missiles. You got missiles. We'll provide targeting. We'll provide everything. Here's where everything is. Here's the plan. Here's the plot. Here's we're going to do the target. We'll help you with everything. And what we're going to do when them sons of bitches fire the first missile, we have all of our plans so we can wipe out everything they got. We're going to shut their mouths once and for all. We're going to weaken them to a point that they ain't going to threaten Russia or China, or ain't going to come back and threaten you anymore. If I were Russians and Chinese, I would see this as the opportunity of all opportunities. If I were the Brics nations, this is what we've been waiting for. Those idiots have bunched all of their ships and their planes all together in one little area, and they're going to attack, and we get to turn them to dust. We get to vaporize this crap. Oh, there is a God. That's what I'd be saying. Thank God for making my enemies fools. We are going to weaken the U.S. empire in a way. They have presented us an opportunity to weaken their military capacity in a way that we could have never dreamed, but we will take advantage of it. That's what I'd be thinking. All right. Do we have any more super chats? Thank you, super chat people, for your great questions and comments. Garland, since Israel owns the U.S. Congress, if President Trump doesn't attack Iran, will the Congress declare war on Iran in an effort to bypass and force Trump? I don't think they can do that. I don't think they can do it. So politically, I don't think they can. Which would now, if they did that, first of all, they couldn't get the votes to declare war on Iran. People would go bananas. But if they did that, then guess what happens? Then Trump wins, right? If we get the crap blasted out of us, if they declare war on Trump, and constitutionally, he's still the commander in chief of the military forces. Even if they declare war on Iran, the commander in chief still has to give the order. And he could say, okay, you declared war on him, but I ain't giving the order to attack. I don't know if politically he could do that, but I don't see how the U.S. Congress could do that and say, we're going to do that. I don't see how they could get away with it. And of course, every soldier that died, they own now. They own every death, everything that happens bad, Congress owns it. It would pull Trump's chestnuts out of the fire, I'll tell you that much. Sparking 6086 says, if the U.S. Congress declares war on Iran, Trump could double-cross Congress and Israel by not attacking Iran and uses his wartime powers to direct U.S. corporations to reindustrialize the U.S. Yeah, but the problem is with that is reindustrializing the U.S. is a process. The U.S. is broke. How are we going to do it? The U.S. does not have now, how about this? We don't have the skilled labor. We're going to build industry. Let me add this. A lot of industry has now using robots and AI, so you're not going to have the job. So you got to spend all of this money. America is a financialized economy. It is not an industrialized economy. And how do you go from being a financialized economy to an industrialized economy? And might I add, look at China right now. The Chinese still have people that are working, but they don't make little teeny back scratchers and stuff anymore. All those kinds of things, the non-skilled labor has now moved to India. Why is that? Because I think the Indian labor is either 3 or 5 times cheaper than Chinese labor. So what is the U.S. going to do? How are we going to reindustrialize when we don't have, and oh, by the way, going to reindustrialize a lot of the stuff we need, like the machines that you need, you'd have to get them from China. The rare earth minerals and a lot of things that you need to be an industrial power, you got to get from China. If you attack Iran, you think China's going to say going to do that? If you declare war on Iran, you think China's going to help you? No, they're going to cut everything off. So you can't reindustrialize now these days without China. And if you do anything to go after China's best bud that gets all of where they get a lot of their, not all, but a lot of oil from, they ain't going to help you. So we can't reindustrialize. That dream is over. That dog ain't hunting no more. How about we look at this one? Of course, that'll never happen. All right. Thank you, Smarkster. Oh, we're going to keep going. The American government is one of the most criminal and corrupt in the world, second only to Israel. I would argue that you left out England. See, that's the thing. Americans don't understand the British Empire. They don't understand that the argument outside of the United States, Americans see Israel as an independent power and say Israel completely runs us and controls us inside the United States. Outside the United States, people look at the British Empire and they say them sons of bitches are up behind everything in the United States, every war in the United States. There's an old saying, something like, it was like the Iranians, the Irish said, if two men get in a fight, one of them had a British guy at his house for dinner the night before. In other words, everything that happens that's bad or fights or wars, the Brits are behind it. So while the Americans see the Israelis as controlling the U.S., a lot of the world, dare I say most of the world, that has faced British imperialism for their entire existence and the malevolence of it, say the Brits control the Israelis. The Brits created. Who created Israel? Have you heard of the Rothschilds? Have you heard of the Balfour Declaration? Well, so a lot of people make the argument that it is the British who control the Israelis, and they use the Israelis as proxies to control the U.S. Think about that. Isn't that a possibility? A lot of people outside of the U.S. believe that, but the Americans don't, because the Americans don't understand the malevolence and the evil of the British Empire. All right, next. Great questions, guys and girls. Spark. I did have the idea for Trump to kidnap Pezeshkian, declare victory, drop sanctions while Iran fakes outrage and replaces Pezeshkian with someone more pro-Brics. Probably too late for that. Yeah, and let's face it, how are you going to get into it, in a country the size of Iran with the technological abilities of Iran and the help of Russia and China? How are you going to get there and kidnap them? Best of luck with that. So yes, that's an idea. But look, Sparky, I'll say this. I appreciate the question in the comment. You have great questions and comments because that's what we're trying to do is have a conversation here. How about that? I think that's it. All right. How about we look at Rumble and see if we have any Rumble rants? That's a possibility. No Rumble rants? I don't see any Rumble rants. I think that's it. And lastly, we will check Rockfin and see if we have any comments on Rockfin. New comments on Rockfin. I don't see any. So that's that. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Certainly appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to hang out with me. If you are, thanks everybody. I appreciate all of my Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee and all of these people who help support the channel. If you can become a Patreon subscriber, if you can, or PayPal, or if you can buy me a coffee where you can do a one-time donation, or of course you can become you can do that just like PayPal, thanks, Cash App, all of the things that people do. I mean, you can do it just like Patreon. I mean, monthly. And of course, anybody who wants to mail something, there's my PO box. People are asking about Jamarl. I don't know. I had about 2 weeks ago, both Margaret, Kimberly, and I heard from Jamarl, and he said he was recovering and he was working on coming back, and it could be a few weeks. That was about 2 weeks ago. And so that's the last I heard of him, heard from him. I know he had that mini stroke, and I know he had some issues. So I'm going to, now that you mentioned, I'm going to text him again and just say, how you doing? Hope to hear from you soon. We all love Jamarl. He's a fantastic guy. And we hope that he gets better soon. I know he, had serious health issues. So let's hope for everything to work out well for him. And hopefully he'll get back. And if he does, we'll all support him as best we can. Thanks, everybody. Share this on all your social media platforms. I'm out. Thanks, Chicken Patty. Especially, I'm out.